Kim Il-sung, the dictator of North Korea from shortly after World War II until 1994. Kim's patriotism since an early age. Kim was the son of parents who fled to Manchuria during his childhood to escape the Japanese rule of Korea. He attended elementary school in Manchuria and while still a student, joined a communist youth organization. He was very active in this organization to the point where he was arrested and jailed for his activities with the group in 1929 to 1930s. After Kim's release from prison, he joined the Korean guerrilla assistance against the Japanese occupation sometime during the 1930s and adopted the name of an earlier legendary Korean guerrilla fighter against the Japanese. Kim was soon noticed by the Soviet military authorities, who sent him to the Soviet Union for military and political training. There, he also joined the local Communist Party. Kim's return to Korea, North Korea. During World War II, Kim led a Korean contingent as a major in the Soviet army. After the Japanese surrender in 1945, Korea was effectively divided between the Soviet-occupied northern half and the US-supported southern half. At this time, Kim returned with other Soviet-trained Koreans to establish a communist provisional government under the Soviets in what would become North Korea. Kim Il-sung's cult of personality really began to take root in 1950, when he led the Soviet-backed invasion of South Korea, kicking off the Korean War. With no two sides gaining any new territory after the violent war, North Korea was left weakened and in need of their strong leader. This was the chance for Kim Il-sung to rise to power. He began to nationalize the North Koreans by demonizing the United States through anti-American and anti-capitalist propaganda. With the aid of the Soviets, he promised a plan for restoration, promising North Koreans of a self-sustained country and economy, an ideal called Juche. Apart from the usage of propaganda to expand the Juche idealism, Kim crushed remaining domestic opposition, eliminated his last rivals for power within the Korean Workers' Party. He became his country's absolute ruler and set about transforming North Korea into a strict, militaristic, and highly regimented society devoted to the twin goals of industrialization and the reunification of the Korean peninsula under North Korean rule. As promised by the dictator, North Korea's state-run economy grew rapidly in the 1950s and 60s, but eventually stagnated. In the 1970s, North Korean mining production had reached its peak. Sudden rises in the price of foreign oil combined with falling prices for North Korea's native minerals hit the economy hard. Surrounding nations began building up economies based on computers and other technology, a shift that North Korea, so focused on mining and military might, was unable to keep up with. With all this, Kim made the tough decision to take on foreign debt from the USSR and China to keep the economy afloat. Political problems also continued to emerge. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, relations between North and South Korea, as well as between North Korea and the rest of the world, were an intense roller coaster. Conflicts kept on emerging near the demilitarized zone, while international tensions mounted too as North Korea announced its growing nuclear program. Things did not continue to go well in the Kim regime. As the USSR began to crumble in the beginning of the 1990s, living conditions in North Korea began to worsen. Most noticeably, the aid that fed North Koreans faltered and then stopped altogether. In 1995 and 1996, a warm weather pattern brought widespread flooding to North Korea. This was catastrophic for North Korea's supposedly self-reliant farmers, as a whopping 15% of the country's already scant arable land was destroyed. A huge famine that affected the 25 million person country due to poor planning, isolation, and a misguided policy of self-sufficiency. On July 8, 1994, Kim Il-sung died. The omnipresent personality cult sponsored by Kim was part of a highly effective propaganda system that enabled him to rule unchallenged for 46 years over one of the world's most isolated and repressive societies. Connection to On Tyranny. Kim Il-sung is a great example of what is written on Tyranny's Chapter 19, which is on being a patriot. The chapter lists many points of what is patriotism and what is not, and many of these points can be connected to Kim Il-sung. For example, it is written, "It is not patriotic to admire foreign dictators." Kim Il-sung did admire Marxism-Leninism, which came from the USSR. However, he did not follow these dictators and just stop. he decided to take these ideas and return back to Korea with the goal of making his country even better. His patriotism can be seen especially with the Juche idealism of being strictly isolated from other countries and being self-sufficient. Another great example of Kim Il-sung being a patriot is written on page 114. It writes, "A patriot wants the nation to live up to its ideals, which is asking us to be the best of ourselves." Regardless of how good or bad his ideals are, Kim Il-sung did set up his ideals and goals and has managed to successfully make the North Korean nation live up to it, not only during his time of rule, but also till this day. All in all, although North Korea is not and has not been one of the leading countries of the world, Kim Il-sung was still a very successful dictator in his own way.